You know something about Spanish language?
No.
No, no idea. It's okay.
I once did an interview. I used to be a journalist, so I once did an interview in Spain. Union leader, and he knew no English. I knew no Spanish, but somehow I interviewed him.
So difficult.
I understand some.
Yes. It's not hard. It's not the most difficult language.
Yeah, no. I speak French and some Italian, so it's not that difficult.
Okay.
Perfecto.
Perfecto.
Sí.
Yep.
Okay.
So we start. ¿Está grabando ya?
Sí.
The recording.
Okay.
So, hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Wow.
Oh.
Oh, you're free. Sorry. I'm picking up the glass. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. No, I don't need it. It's fine.
Well,
Gracias. Okay. Gracias.
so tomorrow is the International Women's Day. Do you consider this struggle for equality between men and women necessary?
Yes, I think there's still something to fight for, definitely.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. ¿Lo tienes?
Sí. Tú sigue sin problema.
Ah, okay. Second question. What advice will you give to a girl who in the future would like to be an European Commissioner for Climate Action?
Okay, these are different questions. So
Oh yes.
Okay, is it all like this? I think that the first thing is be involved, be engaged. If there's something you think should be changed, then say to yourself, what can I do to change it? Is there anything I can do? There are many people these days say, oh, everything is so complicated, so complex, and what can we do? But it means something that people are going into, a movement or a party or writing a letter in the newspaper. We have democracies, and we are so fortunate that it actually means something what you think, what I think. So I would say that the first step is to believe that we can change things. Those who say, oh,
To be
doesn't
involved.
help. Yeah, it can make a difference if you involve yourself, and that is the first thing. And then, since you said what would I say to a girl, I would say to a girl or a young woman, look at the men who have the job today and then say, okay, if he can do it, why can I not do it?
Absolutely.
So that women sort of dare reach out also for, not just for being a commission or some high level, but on at your workplace, in your job, say, should I take one step further? Okay, can I do it? Many women would say, oh, can I do it? Okay, who has the job today? If he can do it, maybe you could also do it. So dare to involve.
There too, and don't be afraid to reach
Don't be afraid, exactly.
the goals. Okay.
And then be ready, if it were for a commission, then be ready to work.
To work hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Third question. In the scientific and political field, do you think there's still a lot of work to do, or is it already starting to see some female leadership?
Well, I still think there are for women in science, what do you mean?
Yes.
En la política.
About
Science and politics.
Science and politics, if there are still things to do for women.
Sí. Yes.
Yes, I think that many of the formal barriers, they have been taken away, but still, I come from Denmark, where in our parliament a little less than 40% of the women will be 40% of the members will be women, so it's not totally 50-50, but today, if you have a new government, I know this is also true in Spain, you cannot appoint, 20 men and 1 or 2 women. You have to balance things more. So I think that in politics it is getting better. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. And I think in science we still, there are some challenges, for instance, when it comes to professors. And there it's about also those who appoint people for these positions. They should sort of look a bit broader, not just appoint those that you know already, but be more open to other kinds of input. Back in the 1980s in Denmark, we made a law that said if you are an institution, it could be a university or an organization, that can appoint people to sit in a public committee of some kind, then you must, it's an obligation, both come up with a name of a man and of a woman, so that you are forced to think, not just, oh, we take the man that we always point to, but, oh, are there any women around? When I was a minister, sometimes some of the organizations said, oh, we don't have women. We cannot. It's okay, then you cannot appoint anybody. Yeah, okay, we look one more time. And then of course they came up with some good qualified women. So I think there's still something that must be fought, but it is also important that the women themselves sort of want to take the positions, and that they put some demands to the men they are married to, so that the man also takes his responsibility for the kids.
So there is an update, but it still isn't equalitarianism 100%.
There's formal equality, formally
yes.
That there is equality, but there's still something to fight for. But I think it helps with a younger generation of women who says, I mean, when they go into a marriage, they say, okay, we will have to share the responsibility for the kids. I have my career, you have your career. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's coming, and we see that it's very much coming.
Yes. Okay. This is some kind of difficult question. Regarding pseudoscience and current trends such as terraplanism or the denial of climate change, do you think that more emphasis should be placed on education and awareness to society to above those beliefs?
Yeah, I think that for someone like me who have been working with climate for really, really many years, it is strange that there are still so many people out there that can be surprised when suddenly temperature is rising, when suddenly you have a water crisis, when suddenly things happen that science has warned us against since many, many years. So I think that it is important that, for instance, young children will sort of get to know about this. I think it's important if you are at university studying to become an economist. I think that it is strange that today we can still educate the economists of the future who doesn't know a thing about sustainability or climate. So I think we still have to think, okay, climate change is one of the biggest challenges and threats for our generations, and when that is so, we must take care that people understand how important it is, and that we integrate climate into all relevant parts of societies. So I do think that more and more people understand, oh, we must listen to science. So in my view, there's something still on the education side to understand climate, but the most important thing now is to make people understand it's not enough to say, yes, I understand climate change is a big issue, and to say, yes, we must do something about it, but actually now to start acting and really understanding it will change our transportation, it will change the way we produce the food, It will change our consumption, really to understand that it also means that we have to do things differently. It's not that we should all go into, oh no, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, but we have to start to understand that it requires changes in our lifestyle. And that is a tough thing to realize.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider too optimistic the Integrated National Plan of Energy and Climate 2021-2013 announced by Pedro Sánchez, where the objective is the reduction of 37% of the current pollution emissions in Spain by 2030?
What was the first? Do I consider it what?
The National Plan of Energy and Climate...
No, what did you say first?
do you consider too optimistic?
Too optimistic.
Too optimistic, yes, sorry.
I'm not the specialist in exactly what can Spain do. So I will not say, is this too optimistic or not? I can only say, I think it's extremely good that, I have been a commissioner until 2014, and I know that in Spain you have huge challenges with your energy system. Mm-hmm. The Spanish citizens pay a high price for their energy.
Oh yes.
One of the highest in Europe, if not the highest. So for many years, seen from the outside, one could see something big needs to happen in Spain. And I think it's good that Spain now came with its plan, because more or less all other countries in Europe, they have already come up with their plan. And that means something to the credibility of Europe, because internationally, if it were not for Europe, we would not have had a climate agreement in Paris. But the rest of the world is looking to Europe and say, okay, you say you are doing this, you have adopted these targets, how are you doing it? So it's important that all the member states come up with their national plans. So I think that is very, very good, and I hope you will have a good discussion around these things in Spain. But whether exactly each point there is the right one for Spain, I cannot judge. I can only say, coming from Denmark, that my experience is when you have these broad, big challenges, energy transformation, going into renewables, changing transportation system, all these, it's difficult, tough political issues. Our tradition in Denmark has been to have broad cooperation between right, left and center, so that we would not, in the energy side, for instance, have stop-go politics, or 2 steps back forward and 1 step back. Okay, then we try this, that. We have had sort of a more, here all the parties, back in June, all parties in Denmark agreed the next 5 years plan for energy. So I know that when you have an election campaign, everybody goes in all sorts of directions, but I would hope that after the elections, somehow Spain, with a broad majority, could agree and say, okay, this climate change challenge, it is so important that we need to agree on how are we doing it. Also because those who are investing, for instance in renewables or in the energy sector, they make investments not for 2 years or for 3 years, but for 40 years or 50 years. So they need to know, okay, this is sort of the way. Does that mean all parties have to agree all small things? No, then you could say, oh, I think this and I think that. But the main way, there it is an advantage also economically, I would say, to a society if you could agree and not just make it a big fight. In a way, I think that climate change, it's so important that it is extremely, it's such a huge challenge that it's important that people can see, here we must try and work together. Also because to the citizens, this is not going to be very easy. I know in Spain you have to close down coal mines. It's not an easy thing to do. How can you re-skill re-educate those who are in the coal mines. What are they going to do tomorrow? Maybe they should have some other education. How do you do that? What about the small villages around these mines? I mean, there are really, really big challenges in getting this right. And there I just think you have to work across parties, but you also have to work between national level and regional level and city level. You know, it's like this, you have to work, but it's also like this. And you also have to work the private sector and the public sector. So it's such a complex challenge that I hope that, I mean, after elections where people have a tendency to sort of highlight where they have differences, that after the elections that they could unite to say, okay, what are the next steps for Spain? I think that would be important.
Okay.
If I can add one thing, sorry for the long answer, but I think also for your
it's okay.
also for your transportation sector. I know transport sector is very big in Spain. 10% of your economy comes from auto manufacturing. And I can see I'm on Volkswagen's sustainability board. And a company like Volkswagen, it's the world's biggest producer of cars. They are now investing 30 billion euros up to 2023 in electrification. Before 2023, they will have 50 models electric cars out. The top CEO has already said that from 2025-26 they start their last round of diesel and gasoline cars. So, and in China we can see they're moving this direction. They want more electrical and sustainable vehicles. So why I mention this? Because for Spain, who is so dependent on the auto manufacturing sector for jobs and for exports and income, as far as I can see, it must be extremely important to modernize, to really think, what will transportation, what will mobility look like 10 years from now? Why would my sons own a car? They're living in Copenhagen, they can share a car, they can call a car when they need one. It's changing fundamentally for a lot of us, the way we think of a car. We will lease one in some periods, and in other periods we don't need one. You know, the whole concept of a car is changing. And for an economy like Spain's, like in Germany, where also 10% roughly of the working force is employed in the auto manufacturing sector. If we in Europe lose this battle so that it will be China or somebody else who takes these markets, these new markets, then it's a really, really big challenge for our welfare. So I think that there are many reasons why in a country like Spain really also to look at the transportation sector, because you have so many jobs there and it would be good to keep most of them.
I agree. I think we need to improve our minds about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Some cities like Madrid have taken measures to reduce pollution levels, such as restricting access to the center of the most populated vehicles. These measures were not well received by citizens. Do you think that the population ignores the real extent of pollution and climate change?
I think it's difficult for us as citizens to imagine that things tomorrow can be different from what they are today.
It's like we talked before.
Yeah, but for us also in Copenhagen, we have a part of Copenhagen where there's sort of one big street through that, and that was made free of cars. Buses can come there and taxis, but not cars. And a lot of bicyclists. And people say, oh, this is it's horrible. What about the shops? And what happened? Today it's very, very attractive, because suddenly there were some other qualities for those living in the city. So I think that our city core center of our cities can can benefit. Look at Rome. First time I was in Rome, I thought, my goodness, this is so noisy, it's so much traffic. And then today, even Corso Victor Emmanuel, the big main street, part of it is many days closed to traffic, and it's a very different city. Of course, you cannot close from one day to the other. You have to find out sort of what are the alternative transportation. Is there a metro? Is there small buses that works? There are many things you have to think about. And of course, when it comes to say my old car, you must not go in here. You cannot say you must not go in here tomorrow because I have bought the car. But I think it's okay to say from 2025 or 2030, whenever, you should already now know we are going to say, due to air quality and many other things, this car will not be allowed in anymore. And you know what? I sat with a group of those producing our trucks, the big truck producers. And that was in this Volkswagen context. And they, at the first meeting, they said, this was about cars, it was not about trucks. It was too complicated with trucks, you know. And then suddenly this debate started. Madrid is saying things on diesel vehicles, Oslo, Paris, Stuttgart, Munich, you know, suddenly. And then these truck manufacturers said, wow, then what should we do? Because the trucks, it's diesel. So maybe we should do more in innovation to find out how we can also have cleaner trucks. So I think that cities who are sending this signal, they also give a push to the innovation that we need. It's not easy, but I think that as citizens we must try and understand that we can make smarter cities, more livable cities where it's nice to be. And I mean, one thing is, but I understand also in Madrid you have sometimes problem with air quality under certain conditions. In Paris they have huge problems with the air quality. Take the Chinese and the Indian cities. It's extremely polluted. It's a health problem, really a real health problem to people. So I think that if we innovate and create cleaner cars, it is to the benefit of all of us, and we can still get around, but we would have a better life quality in the cities and less health problems.
People think about himself, but not about the totally problem. Is the
Yeah, exactly. But there, of course, it's important that. And that's why it's, when we discuss these plans, Spanish plan or whatever, that there's a long time, that it's not just, what do we do next year or next month, but this is what we do so that industry and citizens have time to know what is coming. So it's not suddenly we have to do something. And I think the more long term we can do that, the more gradual we can sort of come to solutions that work to people in their daily life.
Okay. Do you think that the withdrawal of the USA from the Paris Agreement is something reversible? Is the same mandate, or while Trump is in the presidency, is a battle that is considered lost?
I need that again. Whether it's reversible, and the second part?
Okay.
Me falta una coma. Si viene a decir que si cree que haber sido del acuerdo es reversible en el mismo mandato o tendría que estar fuera Trump.
Oh.
Do you think in the Paris Agreement, you know that Trump is getting outside of this? What do you think about that?
I think that that is a big mistake of the United States. But I think one thing is very interesting. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we could not get the Americans into an agreement. oh, we don't want to do anything when the Chinese are not doing. And the Chinese said, we are also not going into an agreement because why should we if the Americans are not doing it? So the Chinese and the Americans, they stood like this. Then in Paris, finally, both go in. Good. Then the year after, Trump is elected and said, we go out. But isn't it interesting that the day Trump said, I want US to go out, China and India said at presidential level, they said, we stay. And not one country has followed US out of Paris up till now. I think that's very, very interesting. I don't think, I mean, it's regrettable that the US wants to go out, but you also know that when the Paris Agreement was created, people thought, what if Trump is elected? And the Americans said, no, Trump is not going to, it's not going to happen, what do you think? But therefore there is this paragraph saying, from a country says that it wants to leave, it takes 3 years. And Trump announced only in June 17 that he would withdraw. So it means that we are close to the election in the US before they actually leave. So you could say, if President Trump is not re-elected, if another president comes in and say we stay, then they can still stay. It's only if Trump is re-elected that it will be a real problem. But I think that is unfortunate. But even worse is, of course, that there is a president in the United States who does not seem to take climate change seriously. And then, of course, it's good that American cities and states and companies, that they are doing a lot of things, and that is good. But of course it would be much stronger for the world if the man in the White House also would sort of do his fair share of what needs to be done in climate. Take G7, take G20, these big international fora for the big economies. There right now, it is a problem that the United States president does not want to talk about climate.
Mm-hmm. But you say that this is a temporal problem.
I hope that it is, but of course, what Trump is doing now, he is pushing back many of the policies done under Obama. And that is not a temporary thing, he's doing that. Then the good news is that the cities and the states and the companies, they say, okay, that is our president, but we continue. We continue in many states to expand in renewables. Mm-hmm. We continue to set up requirements in California for cars. We do this, we do that in all sorts of places in the United States. Many of the American banks say, we start to divest from coal and invest in more sustainable energy. We change the way we invest, and you know, lots of things are happening in the big American companies. They understand that, wow, this is for real. We have to change the way we produce. We have to make more sustainable products. So there are good things happening also, but and that's why I say, if Trump is quote unquote only there for 4 years, it might be manageable. But of course, if he would be in the White House for 8 years, one should not underestimate what it means that the man with the power you have when you sit in the White House is trying whatever he can to minimize and not be serious about climate change. And that is a problem to the world.
Yes.
Yes.
Scientists have demonstrated the influence of climate change with sea level rise. are not optimistic about the influence of reducing CO2 emissions in the medium term on this problem. Do you consider important a change of perspective towards optimism in this battle?
I think it's extremely important that we can see that yes, there are solutions. Is it easy? No, we should not say it's easy. Does it come just like this and cost nothing? No, it costs something. But what we need to understand is that if we don't act, then it costs more economically and for human beings. So I think that, just to say, oh, what can we do? And I'm so depressed about all these climate change. I mean, that doesn't change anything. So we have to say, okay, what are the solutions? Are there solutions? Yes, there are solutions. Could we do more in research and development? Yes, we could do. So I think sometimes things are moving too slow. But on the other hand, if I had told you, say, 10 years ago, that today wind energy and solar energy is cheaper than other sorts of energy, you would have said, no, it's not going to happen. That is the case today. If you are India, who still has 350 million people without access to electricity, and you have to find out, should I pick coal or solar? It is cheaper today to choose solar energy or wind. So I think that what is happening on the renewable side also is a good example why, now we can sort of stop where we started, that if you say, it must be possible, let's do it, let's see if we can do it. Yes, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than you would hope, but look where for instance, the renewable energy thing, how much it has developed over the last 10 years. I think that gives hope for optimism. Another thing, I don't know if this is so much here in Spain, in Denmark, in France, in Germany, people have started within the last 2 years to eat less meat. Why? It was not because you must not eat meat, it was not because of higher prices, but they understood that, red meat is not so good climate-wise. Other kind of meats are better, and fish is better, and vegetables is best. Okay, so many people, grown-up people, old people, young people, but really many young people, they have started to think a bit more about, what do I eat? Where does it come from?
Meat contamination.
Yeah, and you mean habits that we thought that we cannot change. We eat what we eat, full stop. And then suddenly in 2 years' time, restaurants tell me they have to change their menu cards because things are changing this fast. So yes, it gives me hope.
That's the beginning.
Yeah, and when the alternatives are there, I think it's so important that the alternatives are there, that the alternatives are not more expensive than the usual stuff. So it's also important that we think about how to tax things and how to price things so that you're not an economic idiot if you choose the right stuff. But I think there are many reasons why you could be a bit optimist, because things can be changed. And we see now at our universities and schools around the world, young people start to say, we want you to be serious about climate change. And this mobilization sends a signal to their policymakers, say, if you don't solve this, it's our generation who has a very, very, very big problem. Please solve this. Get started and get serious about this. So I think there are many things that can give you hope.
Entonces, de manera individual lo que podríamos hacer es de lo que está comentando. Sería dejar de comer carne.
No, que hay alternativas para ello.
Sí, que no te queden más caras.
Ahora te cuento mejor.
Vale.
Last question.
Yeah.
It believes that it's urgent to treat the migratory flows moved by climate change. That is to say the issue of climate refugees as a present problem and not a future one.
I think that what we see, the big influx of people from, for instance, Africa to Europe, it would be wrong to say that is because of climate change. But climate change is part of it. Climate change is a threat multiplier. In some of those countries where they are fleeing from or emigrating from, they have a lot of problems. But climate change is making these problems worse. So it sort of gives an extra push. You know, if you are in Mali, West Africa, and it hasn't rained for 2 years, and things are changing in a way where what you learned from your forefathers, when to harvest and when to sow, you cannot use that anymore. What do you do if you're a 23-year-old strong person? You say, I can see in my iPad or in my phone, people have better conditions in other places, so you will start to move. So I think we have a big challenge with, particularly in Africa, not just Africa, but in Africa, with growing number of people who should share the resources, who wants a share in the good life, and where there are many reasons why they have challenges and problems, but climate change is making all these problems even worse. And that is why I think that it's also, seen from a European perspective, it's also in our self-interest to address climate change in order to avoid what some predict would be maybe 150 million climate refugees by the middle of this century. And I mean, nobody would want that. So that's extremely important to help, for instance, African states, developing states, vulnerable states, to tackle climate change, to adapt to climate change, and to have their growth created in a smarter way. So that, of course, they want growth as well. They want mobility and cooling and heating and food. How can we produce that in a much more sustainable manner? I think that is a common challenge.
Well, that's all.
That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
See you.
Good. Hope you can use some of it.
Yes, of course.
So, is Women's Day a big thing in Spain?
What?
The 8th of March, the Women's Day, is that a big thing in Spain?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Good, so the photographer?
Yes.
Una pista.